everyone, today is Wednesday, the 2nd of January 2022 Eastern Time. This is the 15th issue of Broncos Review. Today we talk about what is the purpose of the CCP's digital RMB. In October 2019, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg faced a series of intense questioning before the US House of Representatives Financial Services Committee. The questions revolved around Libra, an emerging digital currency created by Facebook. Facebook's plans have alarmed government regulators, who are concerned that the Libra coin could upend the bank-dominated financial system. But Zuckerberg defended the plan. As soon as we put out this white paper on Libra, what we saw was China raced to try to build a system like this quickly, a digital yuan, he said. We can't sit here and assume that because America is today the leader that it will always get to be the leader if we don't innovate. He asked US regulators to choose between a Facebook-style digital currency or a Chinese-style digital currency. Now, more than 2 years later, Facebook's plans have stalled, but China has created China's central bank digital currency, CBDC. Since 2020, several cities in China have been conducting pilot activities for the digital yuan CEP, controlled by the People's Bank of China. On the 4th of January 2021, the digital RMB pilot version app was launched in major Android app stores and Apple App Store. The digital RMB pilot version app developer is the Digital Currency Research Institute of the People's Bank of China. The digital RMB is still in the routine testing stage of the research and development process. Users in the pilot areas selected by the digital RMB operating agency can register for the app. At present, the designated operating institutions for digital RMB include Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, Agricultural Bank of China, China Construction Bank, Bank of Communications, Postal Savings Bank of China, China Merchants Bank, WeBank, Bank, etc. The pilot areas include Shanghai, Hainan, Changsha, Zhan, Qingda, Dalian, etc., Shenzhen, Suzhou, Xiang'an New Area, Chengdu, and the Beijing Winter Olympics venue. A reporter visited the outlets of some operating agencies in Shanghai and learned that there are two main ways to open a personal digital RMB wallet. One is to open it by scanning the code at an institutional outlet, and the other is to directly download the digital RMB pilot version app for operation. In actual operation, the digital RMB pilot version app cannot open an account directly without going through the bank scanning code opening process, and opening a wallet still requires the whitelist authentication process. News such as the app launch mentioned earlier. But the little pink anchors that have appeared on YouTube sing praises and trumpet the following 3 points. Let me roughly summarize. First, in the next 2 to 3 years, 30% to 50% of the M0 in the country will be replaced by the central bank's digital currency, which will basically realize the nationwide promotion of the central bank's digital currency. And most of the ordinary cash will be replaced. This is the world's first sovereign digital currency, and this is a super move that China's RMB has never had since its conception. Secondly, it is a legal tender, but it is only a digital form. In other words, all citizens cannot refuse to accept digital currency. From a legal point of view, its effectiveness and security are the highest. The third-party internet payments such as Alipay and WeChat Pay uses the deposit currency of commercial banks. These coins are digital at the M1 and M2 levels, and does not have the legal effect of the M0 level. Third, break the US financial containment, better protect China's financial security, and skip the SWIFT system. The blockchain technology behind digital currency is precisely decentralized. It can bypass this system and jump out of the containment of the US financial system. In the comment area of this video, a large crowd of little pink screamed excitedly, but I have to spoil the enthusiasm of these little pinks. First of all, regarding the first point of digital RMB replacing cash and other electronic payment methods in China, I would like to say that if the CCP mandates it, it may be successful. If not, it will fail within 1, at most 2 years. I'm willing to bet with this pink anchor. And if it is mandated, these little pinks will definitely complain. Next, I will do a detailed analysis. The second point, I think the concept of the anchor is not clear. M1 originally includes M0. M0 refers to circulating cash. M1 includes circulating cash and deposits. How come M1 and M2 digitization does not have the so-called legal efficacy M0 level? Was this absurd theory taught to the anchor by a PE teacher? Regarding the third point, The broadcaster is thinking, of course, the status and strength of the RMB are not as good as those of the US dollar and the euro, and the acceptance level is far less than that of the Australian dollar, Japanese yen, Canadian dollar and other currencies of a large number of countries, because the RMB it is not freely convertible. Of course, China's economic strength is greater than those of these countries, but does the CCP dare to implement free convertibility? In the past 10 years, it did not dare, and even more dare not today when China's economy is about to collapse and foreign exchange is almost depleted. If the RMB is free exchange, the consequences of over-issued currency immediately would be apparent, and the CCP's economy will immediately collapse. As long as the RMB cannot be freely converted, the third point is bullshit. The digital yuan is different from other cryptocurrencies. In fact, experts say the digital yuan is the exact opposite of Bitcoin, the world's largest digital currency, because the former was created to increase control and regulation, while the latter is the opposite. China's digital payment system is considered one of the most advanced digital currency systems on the planet, with WeChat Pay and Alipay dominating the mobile payments market. Both of the above two payment systems allow users to pay with mobile phone applications when purchasing goods and services. The payment principle of the central bank's digital currency is very different from WeChat Pay and Alipay, but the digital currency supported by the central bank is used. Why does the central bank want to develop a set of digital RMB? If the digital RMB is not decentralized, not completely anonymous, and adopts blockchain technology, it means that the digital RMB starts from its issuance, and in the process of circulation, every transaction can be tracked. Ordinary people in China, who are already subject to mass surveillance, are likely to take the digital yuan's impact in stride. One interview said, with the digital RMB, the country knows where the money is going. Isn't it good to fight corruption or drug traffickers like this? Is it really good? As the Chinese government has made clear the extent of its control over the digital yuan and removed payment control from Chinese companies that had rejected part of government inquiries about the data. Its leadership questioned the central government. Like Alibaba and Alipay founder Jack Ma, the digital yuan has also been praised by the CCP for its ability to create individual blocks and censorship. But the Chinese system is not even the most advanced CBDC central bank digital currency in the world. Cambodia, with its backing, and the Bahamas, with its sand dollar, have both rolled out more comprehensive CBDCs on a broader scale, according to a report by accounting firm PricewaterhouseCoopers. However, China is the first major developed economy to start implementing digital currencies at any scale, and its ambitions appear to far exceed those of established players in the space. China's implementation of DCNY comes against the backdrop of a recent decision to better regulate China's fintech industry, as well as a swift crackdown on cryptocurrency mining. China's tech shock, which has been in full force since the second half of 2020, appears to be at odds with the government's plans to roll out a sophisticated digital currency. In November 2020, just days before Ant Financial was listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, the government suspended its IPO. This would be the largest IPO in history. Soon after, the government besieged Tencent, the tech giant behind social media, WeChat, and another major player in China's online payments. The payment systems of the two companies together account for more than 98% of all mobile payments in China. Some commentators have speculated that part of the government's decision to move DCNY forward is to remove the centrality of these companies' payment systems. However, Mu Changchun, director of the People's Bank of China's Digital Currency Research Center, said DCNY is a backup for these services, and it will not replace cash payments or existing e-wallets. As early pilots have shown, DCNY is interoperable, meaning it can be used on existing payment platforms. It seems more likely, at least in the short to medium term, that the government plans to use Alipay and WeChat Pay as springboards to roll out its digital currencies to the widest possible population, rather than replace them outright. What this means for the long-term future of these payment platforms is an open question. Payment is very important, from the government's point of view, because it is the lubricant of commerce. When you have cheap and reliable payment methods, it increases the speed of doing business. China-focused tech analyst, TechBuzz China founder Maurice said that at the heart of this development is data. Currently, companies such as Tencent and Alibaba generate vast amounts of consumer data, which they then use to create their own financial services. In Ant's case, the data generated through Alipay was then used to match state-owned banks with potential borrowers, with Ant Financial acting as a middleman. However, this is a clear case of moral hazard, as the risk is borne by state-owned banks, not Ant Financial itself. That's part of the reason the government has cracked down on Ant so hard, to stop what it describes as the disorderly expansion of credit. Data was at the heart of Ant's creation of such a vibrant fintech business in the short years before the crackdown. While in theory the Chinese government could access data generated by companies like Alibaba and Tencent as needed, the reality is much more complicated. The status quo is that the government has been struggling to get data from these companies, which is why you're seeing a crackdown on fintech companies, said Fantasy, an adjunct senior fellow at a New American Security Center. He studied the digital yuan, and a report on the project was published in January 2021. The type of data and Tencent generate and how they are stored means the government may not be able to fully read the data, even if it does have unhindered access. In retrospect, these companies have shared some parts of the data with the authorities. Chinese tech giants Tencent and Alibaba have refused to work with government-backed credit scoring programs and denied access to their vast amounts of customer loan data, according to two people familiar with the matter. The People's Bank of China launched Beihang, a private credit scoring company, in March 2018, to create a nationwide system of 460 million Chinese who do not have formal credit histories, but may rely on loans from China's vast fintech sector. But despite operating for a year and a half and being the only company in China approved to provide personal credit scores, Beihang's reach of users is patchy. The lack of cooperation underscores the government's struggle with major Chinese tech companies over control of user data. Tencent owned Tencent Credit and Alibaba owned Sesame Credit, part of its and financial payments subsidiary, were forced to give up their attempt at a credit scoring program after the People's Bank of China revoked permission for Tencent and Alibaba to set up a credit scoring scheme in February 2018. Instead, the People's Bank of China established Beihang and made the fintech giants shareholders in the new company, in an attempt to break the tech giants' oligopoly on credit data. But the new shareholding plan did not pave the way for a partnership. In particular, since Tencent and Sesame currently have the most customer data in the industry, they gain the least from sharing credit data with Beihang. We want to get personal information and credit data from Tencent and Alibaba, said a Beihang employee who asked to remain anonymous. Name, ID and phone number, history of borrowing and repayment. A former Tencent employee familiar with the negotiations between Beihang and its member companies also confirmed that Tencent and Alibaba did not share loan transaction data. Now, by establishing DCNY, the People's Bank of China will be able to create a digital architecture that is significantly more effective at capturing the types of data the government is interested in, without any middlemen able to fight back. In general, it does strengthen authoritarianism. Putting the leverage of financial power in the hands of the government does increase the power of the CCP, Fantasy said. However, as he points out, the situation is more nuanced and complex. It's part of a larger process. It's not so much what the digital yuan will do, but what happens when China becomes more data-driven, and when the government in general has more centralized data. From this perspective, DCNY is part of a larger program long pursued by the administration to gain a more detailed picture of its population through big data. As an MIT Technology Review article puts it, who needs democracy when you have data? The CCP is trying to create a more responsive government system by harnessing the vast amounts of data generated by an increasingly digitized society. Of course, what this means for individuals and the possibility of state repression in a regime with a dire human rights record is not looking positive. The People's Bank of China did say that DCNY may actually be good for people's privacy, as it has advantages over other digital platforms that share data with suppliers. According to Xinhua, China's state-owned media agency, the DCNY will feature controlled anonymity. This means that both parties to the transaction can remain anonymous. In other words, the online store will not be able to collect data from customers, but remain visible to the government to ensure crimes such as corruption, money laundering, tax evasion and terror doctrine financing can be discovered very quickly. It remains to be seen whether the state chooses to stop there, or whether this insight into citizens' financial lives will be politicized or drawn into the still nascent social credit system. After all, the Chinese government has proven increasingly unpredictable when it comes to imprisoning other countries' nationals for some arbitrary purpose. It uses mass surveillance, mostly by recording biometrics, malware and other devices to surveil expatriates in every region, not to mention monitoring their own residents. What ordinary people in China can't think of is that the biggest role of the digital RMB is to strengthen the monitoring of ordinary people. The cryptocurrency is decentralized and anonymous, and the digital RMB is indeed a reverse operation. Not only can it track the whereabouts of all money, it can also control where the money goes. For the past 15 years, the CCP has been preparing for the Koreanization of politics. When the digital RMB is used on a large scale, other payment and cash payment methods will be gradually banned. With China's absurd economic policies and increasingly stringent policy of suppressing the private economy, the economy is gradually collapsing. The CCP is facing more and more people's doubts and resistance. The health code can already control people's travel and range of activities. The next step is to control people's wallets. Many people have forgotten a ticket system that has been used for centuries until the end of the 1980s. At that time, almost all commodity purchases required tickets to control the purchase amount of each person or family, such as food stamps, meat stamps, cloth stamps, tobacco stamps, etc., tickets, etc. The CCP can control people's funds for purchasing every necessities of life through the centralized digital RMB, which is equivalent to controlling the people in the form of digital tickets. Is this a good thing? Besides, the digital RMB is currently only cash. If it can be transferred to a bank account, or WeChat or Alipay, it must still maintain the traceability feature. Otherwise, the meaning of implementing the digital RMB will no longer exist. Those who realize this will try their best to avoid the use of digital RMB. No matter how stupid people are, they will realize the problem and avoid the use of digital currency when they are punished several times for using digital RMB and because the use violates the regulations arbitrarily formulated by the CCP. Therefore, even if the CCP enforces it, it will fail, and people will exchange in kind, leading to the emergence of another underground electronic currency. However, the digital yuan, once touted by the authorities as the safest, was challenged by counterfeit money a year ago. On the 25th of October 2020, at the Second Bund Financial Summit, Mu Changxun, director of the Digital Currency Research Institute of the People's Bank of China, disclosed that counterfeit digital RMB wallets had appeared in the market in response to the question of digital RMB. He said that counterfeit digital RMB wallets have been found in the market, so the People's Bank of China still faces the problem of anti-counterfeiting, just like the paper money era. After the above-mentioned news was reported by the media, it caused an uproar in public opinion and quickly became a widely searched topic. Joe Rong, a researcher at a technology company in Fujian District, Shenzhen, said in an interview on the 28th that it is not surprising that counterfeit currency appears in the digital RMB. The appearance of counterfeit currency makes me suspicious of this currency, because first of all, we must solve the problem of anti-counterfeiting in technology, making sure that no one can copy the currency to the market. But with the development of science and technology, it may be easier to convert digital currency into counterfeit banknotes than traditional banknotes. Joe Rong, who is engaged in the IT industry, said that traditional banknotes are much safer than digital currencies. The security of the holder is greater, but digital currency can be tampered with by masters at any time. If this problem is not solved, digital currency will be difficult to promote. The previous Alipay and WeChat Pay have gone out of China and entered more than 100 countries and regions. A resident of Guangdong, Yusao on the Lake, original name, Yu Seng, said that the digital currency launched by the central bank was relatively rushed. For so many years, Alipay and WeChat Pay have not seen such a phenomenon of counterfeit currency. It is precisely because the central bank has rushed to launch digital currency. First, he wants to prevent the economic crisis, the financial crisis, and prepare for the planned economy in the future. So his technology is not mature. Therefore, the decentralized and non-anonymous digital RMB was not designed to be a cryptocurrency from the very beginning, or for the issuer. It is not encrypted at all, and it is inherently insufficient. Those little pinks does not get it, but there is a lot of sober netizens who understands these principles. Whether the digital RMB can replace the US dollar, I think the CCP must hope for its success. When the CCP has little hope of catching up with the United States in its economy, it attempts to replicate the curve overtaking model of joining the WTO through various signing commitments that will not be fulfilled. By sacrificing basic rights and interests such as education, medical care, housing, environment, survival, etc. of the people of their own country, they gain the advantage of unequal trade and make the economy develop rapidly. Joining the WTO is to achieve the so-called corner overtaking. But today, the CCP is almost street on the verge of being kicked out of the WTO. And the CCP attempts to challenge the status of the dollar through an unconventional model. But the status of the dollar is not obtained by fraud, but by economic and technological prowess. If the digital RMB challenges the US dollar, it is equivalent to the RMB challenging the US dollar. Is it okay for the RMB to challenge the US dollar? Of course it can, but there is no shortcut. Only when China's economic aggregate is far larger than that of the United States, and the RMB is freely convertible, it will be done naturally. However, China's economic aggregate has ranked second in the world for 3 consecutive years, accounting for 60% of the United States total. Even if it stays that way, is still a long way from being eligible to challenge the dollar. What's more, the exaggeration of China's GDP is so high that the real situation may surprise you. First of all, although China still claims that its economy is growing since 2018, the economy has actually experienced negative growth since 2018. And the average person in China should have felt in 2016 or 2017 that their actual quality of life was declining. Secondly, China's GDP is calculated based on China's official dollar exchange rate. Under the premise that it is not freely convertible, this exchange rate is officially controlled by the CCP. According to the comparison of the actual broad money circulation M2, in 2019, China's M2 is $35 trillion US dollars, the United States is $15 trillion US dollars, China's M2 is 2.3 times that of the United States. But its GDP is 60% of the United States, so even in 2019 the exchange rate between the RMB and the US dollar has been at least inflated by 3.83 times. By 2021, the RMB exchange rate is exaggerated to be at least 5 times higher than what is actually worth. It is estimated that many CCP experts will explain that the components of the calculation of M2 between China and the United States are different. Yes, whatever happens to the CCP, they will all have their own way of interpretation. Just like they explained how the Sino-British Joint Declaration is an outdated statement. Just like how they treat their commitments to the WTO, 70% of their commitments have not been fulfilled and they have not been recognized. So, if calculated in real dollar exchange rate, China's GDP is how much of the United States? You can calculate it yourself. It is less than a quarter of the United States. This can be known by comparing the per capita income of ordinary cities in the two countries and the real standard of living. Furthermore, there is no need to intensely draw attention to the deteriorating state of China's economy. The trend of continuous negative growth in the next 5 years has become so obvious. If you are still thinking of challenging the US dollar, are you continuing to have another golden dream around Xi Jinping's Chinese dream? Another purpose of the CCP's issuance of digital currency is to control everything. The CCP is actually very fragile. As long as they find out there are things or organizations around them that are not under their control, they will be extremely frightened. They suppress various religions, demolish churches, and do not allow any NGO organization to exist. The original intention of designing the digital RMB was to overwhelm Alipay and WeChat payment. At that time, these two companies already accounted for 60% of commercial circulation payments, and they were private enterprises. Later, they added the purpose of blocking Bitcoin and preventing funds from fleeing. Now they also want to control everyone's wallet through digital currency. The more they want to control, the more they will find out of control and the more will resist them. China's National Finance and Development Laboratories said that if the digital yuan can become a trade currency used on a large scale, it can help China break away from the US-led global financial order, and it can also promote the digital yuan through China's Belt and Road Initiative. But some point to China's ambitions to use a highly regulated digital yuan to upend the global financial order as unrealistic at best and wishful thinking at worst. Gerard said, "It's nonsense. If China really wants to make the RMB an international reserve currency, it has to open up, it has to abolish capital controls, it has to allow the RMB to flow freely around the world." But the CCP definitely does not dare. Once implemented, the over-issued currency will immediately collapse. Ultimately, however, China's digital yuan may never be able to compete with mainstream cryptocurrencies, which, by their very nature, are not shackled by traditional financial institutions, according to Dr. Berg. My view on central bank digital currencies is that, unless the currency is really tightly integrated into the cryptocurrency ecosystem and interoperable, its development is a dead end. The dollar remains the undisputed king of global finance, accounting for 59.5% of global reserves in the first 3 months of 2021, according to the International Monetary Fund. Meanwhile, the RMB accounts for 2.5% of global cross-border payments. While that was the highest level in 5 years, the US dollar still accounts for 40%, according to the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. Therefore, the digital RMB does have the idea of challenging the US dollar, but it has no such strength at all, and under the control system of the CCP, it has long lost its qualification to challenge. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions, please leave a comment below. Please click like and subscribe.